just realized I'm kind of wearing a lot of gray. But
I guess I'm bringing all the color today.
You are bringing all the color today, and maybe all the energy. I'm wearing all gray. It's pretty gray out. There's a snowstorm coming up to the area, and I'm pretty tired. I don't know why, because I got a lot of sleep yesterday, funny enough. I went to bed early, which was probably smart to do considering the matches. But before we jump into it, hello, everyone. Welcome to Ground Pass, the podcast.
Yes, as opposed to Ground Pass, the social media. Ground Pass the movie.
Ground Pass the movie. Ground Pass the ticket, which we're huge proponents of, Ground Pass the ticket. But yes, welcome to this episode of Ground Pass. You find us in the middle of the Australian Open. So we're pretty much halfway there. If anyone has been listening to or watching our social media, paying attention to what I post, I've tried to make that joke multiple times. Oh, we're halfway there, the Bon Jovi song, but nobody's kind of picked up on it. So, except for Nick. Thank you, Nick.
I'm not going to actually sing because, we know we've had enough mic problems as it is.
Yeah, but it's been sounding really good. Which, hey, leave us a note and let us know how we're sounding, because I think we've maybe solved some of our problems. And thank you everyone who reaches out to us and talks to us about that, because it helps. It helps us sort of be better every time. So Nick, what has been going on for you for the Australian Open? How has it how have you been keeping up with it so far?
So obviously I have a lot on social media to thank for it. I think Australian Open's the slam I probably have the most where I've got most eyes on everything. It's easy for me to follow because in some ways, because tennis is kind of done by the mid-afternoon. I can crack on with the rest of my dates and take over my entire life in the same way. But usually, what will happen is I'll have my matches that I'm interested in marked, and then when I wake up in the mornings, so I try not to set up too late. I did break that rule a couple of times, but on the Discovery Plus app, you can watch full replays of matches, which I can do for the Australian and the French. I can't do for the US. And Wimbledon I can, but they have feeds for the whole court, so I've got no idea when and what time everything starts, rather than broken down by match. But yeah, for this, so basically what will happen is I'll have a flip through all the replays and look at which ones are fairly long, and I know which ones are going to be good matches. So I'll wake up at 6, 7 in the morning, watch what I think is probably the best match from my picks that I was interested in, and do a lot of skipping through changeovers and other things, and so I can get the runtime down. And essentially, then I can catch up on at least one match in the morning. And then when I'm working, if I'm at work, I've got the BBC or AO radio in my ear. And if I can work from home, then I've got a live feed up in the corner on the screen, which I have on mute, so I can take calls and whatnot. So it's all over the place, really. And then basically it's just then scrolling through social media or talking to you about what was actually a good match. What did I miss that happened? It's becoming a lot easier now we're in the third, fourth round. But yes, that is my intensely complicated way of keeping up with the Australian Open that I don't necessarily have to worry about when I am it's all back in the right time zone.
Yeah, I mean, the Australian is, for me, definitely the toughest slam to keep up with. But I think I was really strict with myself. Matches start for me here at around depending on, in the earlier rounds, it was definitely at 7, and then it kind of started shifting to 7:30 and a little later. But matches start around 7 p.m. and I've been staying up till, midnight 30, I think is the longest I've stayed up. I've been really strict with myself with saying, you know what? You need to get sleep. But then what happens is I wake up really early. I wake up at 5:30, and I catch up on the matches. And in the earlier rounds, I would wake up to the tennis. There would still be matches going on. So I would just turn those on and watch them. And then once the matches of the day were done, or at least the night matches were done, I would then pick, just like you, a few matches that I wanted to run back. Now, because I run our social media, it's really hard to avoid scores when I wake up. But I'm such a huge proponent of the score line is really just half of the story. I think watching matches actually gives you a fuller picture. And later on, we're going to talk about a specific match, which that was so clear to me, where I was like, I could have looked at the score line and just been like, okay, cool, that was that match. But actually watching the match back was really, really helpful. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting seeing how different people are keeping up with the Australian Open in different time zones. For Ground Pass, we have like, this was weirdly, if you look at our Instagram grid, you would think I did this on purpose in the sense that I had thought about this and planned it. But it just so happens the first day I did the first row of it, and I thought, oh, I'll just keep going. But basically, what we do on our Instagram channel is I do a coffee catch up, which I had started a while ago, just catching people up on our episodes, a little quick sort of like 1 minute, 2 minute rundown of what we talked about. But I did one for the first day of the Australian Open. I really like making them because I really like making coffee. And it's been a challenge trying to find a different way to make coffee every single day. I discovered my mocha pot again.
I mean, as a man who doesn't drink coffee, the number of different things you could do to it just constantly surprises me.
There are different methods of making it. It's been fun doing those. So I do a coffee catch up, which is basically just me talking through the matches or the moments of the day that I think were worth your time. Then I do a sort of carousel of a few players and matches that I think were important, or basically players I would like to sort of highlight. So it's usually not your faves. It's not your Carlos Alcarazes and your Sinners. I'm not putting those matches in our GP rundown. That's what the carousel is called. But I'll put, I think Clara Tauson wasn't one of them. Lerner Tien was, his first round match was featured in that way before the whole Medvedev thing. And then the last thing we do, obviously, is our watch list. So I did the first one for the first day, and I just said, oh, I'll do the one for the second day. And next thing you know, I'm doing them every day. And they have been really fun to do. But speaking of that, a listener of the podcast, really early listener, Felicia, she hasn't watched one match of the Australian Open. Like, the time zone just doesn't work for her. She has a lot of work to do. And what she does every single day is watch the coffee catch up. That is how she's keeping up with the Australian Open. So I thought that was like super cool. Yes, we do love you, Felicia. Thank you for hanging out with us every single day. But yeah, there are different ways of keeping up with the Australian Open. And here's the thing, I know we sort of cry about the Australian Open time zone all the time, but guess what? They have to deal with that time zone situation for every other slam for the rest of the year. So I'll give them this one. They can have their one Grand Slam, because I know they have to deal with some crazy hours as well when it comes to the US Open or Wimbledon or Roland Garros. So those are a little, that's how we're keeping up with it. Let's talk about what's been going on. Now, Nick, before we get into maybe specific matches, in general, what has been your general takeaway from the first week of the Australian Open?
Well, I think my take is probably the same as yours. The kids are coming. The kids are here. The teenagers versus the top 10, 3-0 in the end. Or maybe it was a bit more complicated than that, but certainly on the men's side, I mean, that for me has been the fundamental story of the Australian Open. I cannot think of any other Grand Slam where every potential interesting talent has won a significant match. Fonseca, we've been talking about for ages. Mensik, we've been talking about for ages. Lerner Tien, obviously, since his Next Gen Finals performance. Alex Mickelson's come up a few times. Frankly, we were just missing Jerry Shang doing magical things, and obviously he was sick. So that's why we haven't heard much from him. Otherwise, he could have made the fourth round instead of Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, who we played in the first round, and was on one of our watch lists, I think, for that. Yeah. And now everyone's like talking about these five guys. You throw in Bas Ferretti as well, who gets a set off Novak Djokovic. Now, like, obviously we've got an interview with him, which was awesome back in that Champagne Challenger. Oh gosh, there's another name. That's like, there's like 7 guys who are like all about the same sort of age who are all kind of coming through. And then you've got the people who've already broken through.
The Portuguese, do you mean the Portuguese kid? Is it Jaime
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he's a different person. Who was it? Tien, Mickelson, Basavaredi are the three Americans. No, it's gone.
Mensick, yeah.
Fonseca, yeah. There's another guy in that mix. Feast, Arthur Feast.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. And, like, he was kind of already broken through given like the results that he's had, and then lest we forget Shelton, who we've been talking about for a couple of years now, and the one and only Carlos Alcaraz. And I put Alcaraz in this bracket because he's only like 2 years older than these guys, 2 or 3 years older than these people who are like breaking through and causing all these upsets. But when I'm talking about what's happening in Australia and people asking what's going on, that's the first story I'm talking about. The teenagers are here. The 2000s generation is taking over, and I'm scared.
Well, I mean, you don't have to take them on court, Nick, so you should be fine.
I think I could just about manage someone who played tennis in the 1950s.
No, but you're right. For me, that is the biggest story coming out of this Australian Open. And I almost like with every win that these teens and young next gen had, I almost wanted to just give us a little clap, pat us on the back a little bit. Because, and I know you are not a huge, massive fan of next gen, but we definitely, and when I say next gen here, I mean the tournament that the ATP does. But, I love it. It's one of my favorite tournaments of the year. We've talked about it a lot. We've talked about these players on this channel a lot because we saw the talent. And I think, especially as a ground passer, we wanted to give players to follow who they could actually see on a ground pass. And here's the thing. Based off of this Australian Open, you'll be lucky to see these people on a ground pass again. Because they're moving up so quickly. So that's the importance, I think, of, finding these players young, building a sort of idea of who they are and who they are as players, and then following them along on the journey. Hey, will all of them make it? Maybe not. But I think this is a really good group of players. Now, I think Fonseca didn't make it past his, after he beat Rublev, he didn't win his second match against Sonego. Mensick, after he beat Ruud, lost his next match. Who did he play next?
Davidovich Fokina.
Mensick. Fokina, exactly. He
dropped it. Davidovich Fokina and Lorenzo Sonego are both resistant to whatever force is coming through, because Sonego could be is Leonard Tien's next opponent, and this which is happening on a ground pass on the John Cain Arena tomorrow.
Today?
I don't know what day you're listening to this. It's going to be, we're recording this on the 19th of January. They are playing on the 20th of January. I'm not going to try and work out what time they're playing because I think it'll be Saturday for you and Sunday for the rest of the world. No, Sunday for me. What day is it, Anastasia?
It will be Sunday for us, Monday when they play in Australia, and this episode is going to come out Monday.
Yeah,
but probably after they've played. So
if I don't turn up for work tomorrow, I'm going to send them this episode and say I forgot what day it was.
The Australian Open turned my clock. But yes, again, this is really great. Mickelson backed up his win. He was one of the early upsetters, I would say. He beat Stefanos Tsitsipas, went into his next match, took out Karen Khachanov. That's 2 top 20 players that he took out in one tournament. It's been a while since someone's done that. Leonard Tien took out Medvedev and then won his next match against Corentin Moutet, which of course was a fun time for everyone involved. Maybe not Moutet per se, but it was a fun match to watch. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about these players. Another thing that actually has, that's come out of this Australian Open for me is the number of American players they are. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like any of these people are new, but seeing them all in a group at one tournament, we always say this thing about how every other play is an Italian. No, every other player is American. There were so many of them in the draw and so many of them heading into the second week.
Yeah, and to be clear, having a generation like that all from the same country is relatively rare. I think Sinner Musetti and that kind of generation are kind of together, but there are a lot of Italians. But yeah, I think it's very promising for the US with that, especially since they've finally moved on from the big serving play style of the 90s and the Andy Roddick way of doing things that was keeping him in the top 10, like John Isner and Sam Querrey. Like, those guys were good, but they were limited in the way the game had evolved, in that it was no longer all about dominating with serving aces all the time, because the ability for the men's game to return has improved, and like it's going to continue to improve if you look at what Fonseca and Tien and Menzik are doing. And I think they've finally moved on. Like Basavareddy's more based on Djokovic. You've got Mickelson, who's very unconventional in his approach. You've got, I said Leonard Tien is like often compared as basically a lefty Medvedev, which was something to think about when they played each other. And then Basavareddy, Mickelson, and Tien. I think those are three, aren't they?
Yeah. But also, I would have to say Ben Shelton, who I think a lot of people, especially when he first came out, would compare him to sort of a big serving American player, Roddick, Isner. That was sort of the MO. But I've been listening to some of his press conferences this tournament, and he said in his off season, a lot of what he was working on was the return and, varying it. So it's not everything as a big serve, because yes, that will win you some matches, but will that win you a Grand Slam? And I think the ambition of all these new young Americans coming up is to move on. And I know we're talking about the men, but then on the women's side, you have Emma Navarro, you have Peyton Stearns, Jessica Pegula is still there. She's out of the tournament, but Madison Keys is still in the tournament.
Coco Gauff
Danielle
is still 20, by the way. She's 20 for another
exactly. Coco Gauff is still there. It's really nice to see this really deep, kind of group of American players. And I think it speaks to the popularity also that tennis is having in the States. It's definitely growing. There are definitely more people watching tennis. And now they have people they can cheer for. Because I think that's a lot of things with people. If they don't have anyone they can kind of latch onto for whichever reason, it's tough to then sort of follow.
This is where the big three kind of helped tennis when the Americans weren't necessarily breaking out on the men's side. The women's tennis was always going to have an interest because of Serena and Venus, and then later on we got Sloane, we got Maddie Keys, and we've had Coco Gauff come along. I'm sure there's Eva Jovic is looking very promising, the 17-year-old. Very excited to see what she can do. But yeah, in terms of talent on the women's side, like that's probably that's really going to be a problem. But like the big three keeping it popular and people being able to model and get excited about what they were doing has probably played a big part in it. And then the explosiveness of Alcaraz and Sinner showing that like tennis is going to just get more exciting is great. And this is kind of reminding me, we were talking about this generational thing, it's reminding me of, again, I'm going into tennis history mode here, kind of what happened in the late 80s, early 90s, when you had this generation of Americans who came along at the same time and everyone was very excited for. And this is probably even before Anastasia's time. She will probably, some people might even know some of these names if you're old enough, Pete Sampras, Andre Agassi, Jim Courier, who probably people know more as a guy who does interviews now, and Michael Chang, all of whom were very promising teenagers. Some of them won slams as teenagers, or at least very young. Andre Agassi was like reaching Grand Slam semi-finals in his teens, and it was just a matter of time when he won a Grand Slam. Todd Martin was in the mix, but yeah, those four guys kind of came through at the same time and ended up being the leading players of the 90s. Am I saying the same thing's going to happen this time? No, because that's a lot of pressure. And also because I think the tennis landscape is so different, because you've got like 4 or 5, like you've almost got a top 10 locked in from these guys who they're going to be competing with. I think the Brazilians will probably definitely have something to say about this with Fonseca. But I think that it's comparable for the excitement of the potential that they can bring. And yeah, it must have been very interesting being back in sort of 88, 89, 1990 when that generation was kind of coming along.
Yeah. No, it's a great time for tennis in the States and for tennis in general. But let's go back to the Australian Open. What have been our favorite matches, our favorite moments? I mean, for me, the first, I have to say the Lerner Tien Medvedev match, that's one of my favorite matches of this tournament. It was the ebbs and flow of that 5-set match is truly the reason why Grand Slam 5-set tennis is it's elite. It's just the best out there, because I think there was a whole story. The first 2 sets, Lerner Tien's dominating, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a straight set upset. Everyone's just like on the edge of their seats, like people are being like, what's up with Medvedev? Is this the end? People are writing their stories. And then the third set, Medvedev comes back and you're sort of like, this is one of those Medvedev. He loses the first 2 sets and then it's 5 sets. And he has a funny interview at the end about like how he loves 5-set tennis. So that was the third set. And then the fourth set, I think it was a battle, it was a fight, but you could kind of see, like, you were like, learner, like, you're like, he looks tired, maybe he was just slow, and it was almost sort of a foregone conclusion after the end of the fourth, and then the fifth comes, and you're just like, my word, Lerner Tien. It was such smart tennis, and I loved his interview after, where first of all, the guy who interviewed him after that match, I will give him grace because I think it was past 3 a.m. in the morning, but that was one of the craziest interviews I've ever heard. Lerner saved it in the end when he got the mic and he just said what he wanted to say. But one of the questions that he was asked was just how he got through it and what his strategy was. And for someone so young, he did have a strategy. He kind of was like, saving himself in the fourth, but was smart enough to know that it's advantageous to be the one serving first in the fifth. Just thinking of the sort of the tennis strategy, which I was just so impressed by him. And yeah, truly one of my favorite matches.
It was awesome to watch. I mean, there was part of me sitting there going, I can't believe they're going till FM, like, again. And it's a little bit of a hang-up of mine that no one seems to have a problem. No one seems to be able to solve this problem. But beyond that, yeah, it was a great match. And I loved the way you described it, of the way like that match went, that Medvedev just wouldn't go away because he doesn't. And it was all on whether Tien could keep up with him, keep up the intensity, had the fitness to do it. And he did. And he was awesome. And like the tennis at the end of the match was just fantastic to watch. Do you know what I was even more impressed with Tien by, though? Was then he won his next match against Corentin Moutet. Because I thought most players are cooked when you have finished a 5-setter at 3 a.m. And at 19 years old, I didn't think he would have the fitness to do it. And that's not a disrespect to him. I can't think of a 19-year-old who would. Apart from maybe Carlos Alcaraz or Rafael Nadal back in the day. And Tien came out and beat Corentin Moutet in straight sets. And you wouldn't have been able to do that without being way more than 50%. I was like, yeah, well, he did well, and like he's going to come back. But yeah, he's in the fourth round. He's got a really good shot of making the quarters now. So yeah, I loved that Tien Medvedev match. I think that was one of my highlights of the tournament too.
Do you have, what other matches have you loved so far?
This is coming part of like the weird experience I have with the Australian Open, that I haven't watched most of these matches live. So I liked I enjoyed the Navarro Peyton Stearns match, especially since you had no idea who was winning that one.
Oh, that was yeah.
At all. And Peyton Stearns, she's got to figure out how to win these close matches at some point, because
she really does, because she keeps having them. She was there so many times to win that match against Navarro. Navarro is someone who's so interesting this tournament, because I feel like she just hasn't even played well at all and is in these constant battles, and she's gotten through all these 3-set matches. But that one in particular, I think Peyton Stearns could have won, but
and
she can't close it out.
Fourth round potentially, although that Stearns-Jabeur match, Navarro-Jabeur, actually I really enjoyed watching, because that was seeing Ons-Jabeur's magic on full display. But like that, it was a roller coaster with Ons, because she was way up and then she was way down, and Navarro was just keeping this consistent level that just kept bothering her, because that's not what Navarro does. Other than that, I think there's another match I was like interesting in that, like, I watched it knowing the score, because basically I knew I wanted to watch it back. I'd run out of time to watch it because I'd watched Sabalenka versus Towson as my morning catch-up match, and that was a blockbuster. If you like watching women hit a tennis ball really, really hard, that was the perfect exhibition of that. Like Sabalenka Towson, and Towson really battled Sabalenka for 2 sets there. Like, that could have that was a possible upset if Towson had cut the unforced errors. But Vekic Schneider was happening at the same time, and that was super close. Again, that ended up being 2 tiebreaks and a 7-5 decider. And I knew the result because basically I'd been watching the other matches and the commentator said, "Oh, Vekic got through." I was like, "Well, that's brilliant."
Yeah.
Never mind. I thought, no, Joe, I'm going to watch it anyway because it might be. And like, I knew the outcome, and I still enjoyed every single point that I watched because it was those two were really going for it, and yeah, that was a great display of tennis as well. So yeah, I'd say like in terms of like the closeness of matches, like super close, really exciting matches, for me it's that. Also, if I'm going back to the men's, Jack Draper against Alexander Vukic.
Ooh, that was good. That was
such
good.
A good match. Like, I
felt so bad for Vukic at the end of that. I really did feel bad for him.
I was in a group chat with a lot of Brits, and I was the only one who was like, I'm okay with Vukic winning this because he's playing really, really well, and it's in Australia, and it would be such a cool story. And everyone was like, Draper for the win!
No, that was tough because Vukic fought tooth and nail for that, and it was... it was in tennis, there's one winner, and that one, it's a knockout round. That winner moves on to the next round, and then the other loser is out of the tournament. And that was just one match where I was like, is there any way they can both be winners? It was really, really tough, especially with Draper, who I think for this tournament for Draper, the discussion around Jack Draper, he definitely is, I think, the next British hope when, Brits think of, okay, we lost Andy Murray, who's next, and I think Jack Draper is that person, but his fitness has always been a question. And even though he came into this tournament slightly injured, I think he announced over his, off-season. He announced over his off-season that he had a slight hip injury. So he came into this with that. He still played 2 5-set matches back to back and got through them. So I think he can take away 3. He
was 2 Nick sets has 3 down in all of them, I think.
In all of them, yeah. So I think he can leave this tournament with that sort of hanging around his neck, like as a trophy, I did that. I have the fitness to hang with these top players, which is really, really great. The match I was talking about earlier that I really wanted to bring up is this Elina Svitolina versus Jasmine Paolini.
Yes, I'm surprised about that choice.
That was a match where, I'm very interested in sort of athletes' mentality and how they think. And after the first set of that match, Svitolina was double faulting. She wasn't finding the court. She was so lost out there. And Jasmine Paolini in her little bouncy self was just like, yep, I got it. And she won the first set. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess this is just going to be a Jasmine Paolini win, which I'm all for. I love Jasmine Paolini. And at the time, I wasn't even thinking of the whole sort of like, if you haven't heard or follow us on social media, because I think I talked a bit about this ad nauseum, but Gael Monfils on the same court just before had upset the 4th seed Taylor Fritz and won his match. And here was Elena Svitolina playing the number 4 seed on the women's side. But again, at that time, I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. I was just like, yeah, they're married.
I saw the social media buzz about it. By the way, the Fritz Monfils match, best 4-setter of the tournament. Because, I haven't watched all of it, but what I watched was epic.
Yeah.
Loved watching that match. And I just say, Gael Monfils' post-match win celebration of that dance that he did is like one of my favourite things I've ever seen happen on a tennis court.
He is the ultimate entertainer when it comes to a tennis player. And that match was epic. I suggest everyone go back and watch that because Taylor Fritz didn't even play bad. But just 38-year-old Gael Monfils was on a different level.
Everyone's been talking about Novak Djokovic being the oldest person to win a Grand Slam in the Open era. What if it ends up being Gael Monfils?
I'll be here for it for sure. That would be so sneaky if he's just like, oh, actually it's me. Actually it's me. But no, back to the Svitolina match. So, she loses the first set. I think it's a foregone conclusion. Jasmine's going to win. It's going to be great. And she comes out in the second set and absolutely turns it around. I have not seen in a very long time an athlete sort of choose to make a different, choose to take a different approach and just go full steam ahead and, sort of like all care to the wind and just nail it. And I think Jasmine just didn't know how to respond because Svitolina switched it up on her. And that second set, you could just see Jasmine get so frustrated. And you never really see her get frustrated. She's kind of a happy, bubbly, like, it's fine, works with the crowd, that sort of thing. But she really was getting upset in that second set. And once Svitolina won the second set, she was like, I have this. And I don't know, it was I think a lot of times I watch tennis matches and I'm always like yelling at the television where I'm like, do something different, change the strategy. I know this is what you planned to do, but how about you switch it up a little bit? But I get it, sometimes with tennis players, it's kind of like stay the course, your plan will work eventually. But I loved how Svitolina just turned it around and won so dominantly after losing the first set so dominantly. I think that was a really, really great match in terms of just like one of my interests, which is just athlete mentality. And then after it was all over, it was sort of like, oh, wait a second. Svitolina just took out the fourth seed. Gael just took out the fourth seed on the same court, back to back. Love is in the air. Love means a lot more than nothing.
I know we're the ground pass. We're all about ground passes, and we will never not be about ground passes. Margaret Court Arena was where it was at this week because you had the Fritz and Svitolina story from yesterday. You had, or today, or no, the day before, or 2 days ago.
The day before.
Time is wibbly wobbly. But then you think about all those young gun matches that we were talking about. They were all wins on Margaret Court Arena. Like, I'm sure Draper Vukic was Margaret. No, it wasn't Margaret. No, it was John Cain, I think. That was John Cain, yeah. The People's Court, they call it. Yes. But aside from that, like, really, Margaret Court Arena was the place to be because something was happening on that court almost every day this week.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a great, court. And you could, on a ground pass, watch it on screen. So what to expect week 2? What? You have one more?
We're going to talk about it. Like you said, what to expect week 2? Answer is a lot of big screen tennis, right? Because most of the singles matches are going to be on the stadium courts. And in fact, soon the doubles will probably get moved onto the stadium courts as well. So we'll go into it. But okay, I'm going to say this now. This is controversial. Like, if you want to go for the atmosphere and watch a match on a big screen on a ground pass, I don't judge you, but it does not appeal to me. It does not appeal to me because why would I pay to watch a match that I could just sit at home in my pajamas on TV with snacks and maybe a couple of good friends around as well if they're comfortable with me in my pajamas. So yeah, that's my stance on it. I think it's one of those things like if you're going and if you want to be part of the tennis and you want to go and watch some wheelchairs and whatnot, and there's something big happening, run to Garden Square or Henman Hill or whatever it is at the US Open.
Just in front of the fountains.
At the fountains, and watch it on the big screen, sort of so you're there for that kind of moment. But yeah, I don't fully get it. I'm sorry. This is my ground pass rant.
So this is what I'm laughing because Nick and I had this conversation over text message when I was like, oh, I'm going to do the watch list and I'm going to like put a little like TV emoji next to like the matches that I'm going to just watch on the screen. And he was like, why would you do that? Like, why can't you just do it?
Like,
and
yeah, you can see the difference in our watch list is that Anastasia did that with hers. And I just went, right, where's the best juniors match? If I'm going to be going to the tennis, I am watching tennis. I'm going to watch live tennis. I'm going to get the thing I can't get at home.
And it was so funny. And I was just like, Nick, this is why you're a homebody. You're just like, I'll just be in my pajamas. Why would I leave? I have snacks at home, which I completely, very different types of ground passers. And but people do want to go for the atmosphere. It's so funny. I saw, just before we started recording, I saw a little like reel on Instagram that was released by the Australian Open promoting actually the second week and just coming to hang out. So if you're coming to the Australian Open in the second week, it's going to be 59 Australian dollars for a ground pass, which is approximately 37 US dollars. And there are different areas around the grounds where there'll be big screens where you can watch what's happening on the show courts. But of course, you can also go to the little courts. And I think John Cain Arena does close at some point, but basically you can go to the outside courts and watch juniors, you can watch wheelchair, or you can go to Garden Square or the Grand Slam Oval where they have seating and their little bars and food, and you can just watch on the screen as well.
I will say this, last point on watching stuff on big screens from me, I promise. The Australian Open, I think, does that aspect the best. Because Henman Hill is very much about the British, let's go and have a picnic and sit on a blanket and sort of sit on the hill and watch the big screen. And that's a fun sort of vibe, but it's not for everyone. US Open sounds like it's grab a spot where you can see a screen from somewhere if you can.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Whereas Australian Open is like they actually have somewhere fairly cozy and comfy that you can sit and get a drink and like have an actual chair and watch it. So they actually seem to have set up well for it. And the French are just like, summit.
No, because at the US Open, there are big screens everywhere, but there's no sort of purpose-built. Actually, okay, I take that back. Last year was the very first year that for the finals, they actually had seating like they do at the Australian Open. They had these like lawn chairs that they brought out and they put in front of Arthur Ashe where the biggest screen is. That was actually the first time they've ever done it. Other than that, before you would just like sit on the corner of the fountain or like find some grassy area to sit down. It wasn't sort of purpose built. So they might have taken that from the Australian Open and will probably carry it on to the future. And I remember they had a whole thing where, so you would get a ground pass, and I think it was even less. It was like for $20 or $25, you would get a ground pass. You would come and watch the tennis on the big screen. And then they opened up Louis Armstrong for a little like mini concert. I can't remember what band played now, but they made a whole thing of it at the US Open. But yeah, I like the setup that the Australian Open have, and they're definitely promoting it that people should just come hang out. And we had one of the episodes that was released last week was the one that I did with Craig Shapiro. And because I didn't really realize how much the Australian Open is literally right in the middle of the city of Melbourne. So it seems like very accessible. Like for the US Open, it's a bit of a trek if you're coming out here. So I can understand why you wouldn't just like, oh, I'm just going to trek over to Flushing, and it's a process. But it seems like for the Australian Open, you just walk, you leave your apartment, you walk downstairs, and you either take the free tram or just walk over to the grounds and you can enter. Like it seems like a definitely more accessible, just, oh, let me just come hang out. It's almost like hanging out in the park and the tennis is on at the same time. So it's actually, I think it's pretty cool. Definitely now on my bucket list of Grand Slam. I mean, it always was, but of Grand Slams to go to, I'll be excited for that.
But not on your bucket list to go to?
I know.
What do you mean? It's French Open here.
I just don't think they have that set up yet in terms of like having a public area where people can just hang out and enjoy the tennis in the second week. But hey, the screens are not the only reason why you go to a Grand Slam in the second week. There's so much tennis still happening on the grounds, and you might not know what those are because I think it's definitely a niche audience who knows about junior players or wheelchair players or even some of the doubles pairings. But looking ahead to the second week, there are definitely some doubles and juniors and wheelchair players that I'm looking forward to seeing. Definitely on the doubles pairing side, Tomas Mahach and Triple Z, Jean Gigène, they're still in the tournament. Really excited to see how far they go. One of my new favorite pairings, He Shu Wei and Yelena Ostapenko, the contrast of those two people, and now they're a doubles pair. I'm excited to see those. And then, of course, Mira Andreeva and Diana Schneider, who are both out of the singles tournament, but are still in the doubles together. I think for me, they're my doubles pairing to watch. They first sort of got together during the Olympics last year and got to the finals and got a silver medal, so, and that was just the first time they'd ever played together. So they're a team to watch for sure.
And they're on a winning streak because they actually won the doubles in Brisbane. So
that's true. Yeah.
Are unseeded, but they are very, very dangerous. And I was, again, the article I wrote a few weeks ago, I actually was like looking at Andreeva's progress and saying that like it's kind of comparable to Coco Gauff's in terms of like doing similar things at similar ages. And there's around about the time when Coco Gauff went and did doubles with Jessica Pegula at a similar age. And well, look how that turned out for her. They ended up being one of the teams to beat for a couple of years. They never quite achieved a slam, but they got a couple of good titles together. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what those two can do together. They seem to get on really, really well.
Yeah. Speaking of unseeded doubles players, Rajiv Ram and Austin Krajicek, who are pairing up together for the first time this year.
Not seeded?
I'm
still confused. How are those two not seeded?
I am so confused. It was actually, I was going to mention it, but that was one of my favorite matches so far of the tournament. The very first one they played, where they played Matt Ebden and his new partner, Joran Vliegen. And that, I mean, first of all, that match was crazy because I was like, wait, there are 3 former world number 1 doubles players on the same court about to play. And one pairing is unseeded. I just thought that was absolutely crazy. And I think Matt Ebden was injured for that one. So Rajiv Ram and Krajicek, they won the match, but so emphatically, like it seems like the pairing works really, really well. They've won their next match. Next up, they're playing Harry Healy-Rivera and Harry Patton, who are the current Wimbledon champions in men's doubles. And I mean, I don't care what time it is. I'm watching that match. That is a must watch. I don't know when it is. I think it's tonight, sometime. But
now because I've got the schedule in front of me.
Oh, please tell me.
It is third match on the 1573 arena.
Ooh.
After Sander Gilles and Jan Zielinski play Kevin Kratz and Tim Putz, which is also going to be a very, very good doubles match, by the way.
Yeah. So it might be late for me. Yeah, it might be late. What's the first match?
Juniors, Alame versus Kovachkova. So it's a girls' match.
Okay, maybe.
So the doubles match before is not before 1:30 a.m. GMT, which is for you 8:30 p.m. So that's when the Gilles Zielinski match, Zielinski Kravitz Putz match is. Like if that's an hour and a half, 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. walk out for Helia-Vara Patton and Krajicek Ram.
Okay, we're watching that. That's the cool thing about doubles too, and probably juniors as well. They don't go long. A long doubles match is 2 hours of, pushing it. So definitely going to be watching that one live.
There is one potential downside. It clashes with Sonego versus TN.
Oh, well, we're just going to double stream it. I have to watch both because I have to watch. I think Sonego, by the way, so Sonego was the one who took out João Fonseca from the tournament. And it seems like he's on a mission to take out all the young guns. He's like, I am Lorenzo Sonego and I'm still here. You young guns won't take me out. So that's going to be an interesting match to watch. What else to look forward to? Okay, juniors. Juniors is a tough one because even I don't know these junior players. I think this is actually something we are going to delve into one of these days on Ground Pass because I don't even know how you follow juniors. Like the only time I ever watch junior matches are during the Grand Slam. So it's like, what do they do outside of the Grand Slam? What's their schedule like? That's going to be something really interesting to dive into. But the juniors that I do want to watch, one of them is Jagger Leach, who I saw at Miami Open last year. He was Ben Shelton's hitting partner, and he's also the son of Lindsay Davenport. So he's, his mom is a massive tennis player. Everyone knows who I hope everyone knows who Lindsay Davenport is, but excited to see how he does. He won his first round match. And the other junior player that I am very interested in is Daphne Mpeshi Pericard. There are two of
Sister?
them. Sister. There are two of them. I cannot believe it. I saw the name on the drawing. I was like, no way. How tall is she? How old is she? What's happening? So really excited for that one. She won her first round match last night, and I'm excited to see how far she goes in the draw and just watch her play, because if her brother is anything to go by, we might have another big hitter heading to
She's going to start
the
writing the name of
main
a backroom
tour.
in the big serving department. There was another
Yeah.
child of a former tennis player playing in the juniors as well on boys' side, Cruz Hewitt, who everyone's making a load of fuss about. Leighton Hewitt's son.
Because he was in qualifying,
I
right?
think so, yeah.
For the
He's
main draw, but he didn't make it through. Yeah.
actually playing the junior number 1 seed tomorrow.
Ooh.
Last match on court 3. Kumstadt. So it seems to be like whenever there's a fuss about a junior, it's usually because they're the child of a certain player or player from the past.
Yeah.
We've seen that like with Brandon Holt, who's Tracy Austin's son, and other people like that. So yeah, I think I agree with you. We need to have a look at it. I'm starting to get an idea of it from just doing a little bit of a dip in, and like there's someone I follow on Blue Sky who's very good with following it. So I'm getting an idea of that, and like pay attention to the Orange Bowl. Apparently, that's a junior tournament that you tend to get a lot of future champions coming from. So whoever's won that is someone to watch, apparently.
Interesting. So weirdly enough, I think maybe it's not on Netflix, but it's on Amazon Prime. There's like a Breakpoint style documentary about the Orange Bowl that I've definitely heard of. I've never watched it, but I've heard of it. So yeah, maybe I'll add that to my research for a future episode. And then lastly, wheelchair tennis. I'm really interested in seeing Takeda Oda. The last time I saw him was from that epic final at the Olympics, and his like beautiful celebration. That was like really cool. But also I just wanted, because I was looking through the draw to just see like, oh, who do I want to watch and blah, blah, blah. Dita de Root, who's a female, who's basically the GOAT of female wheelchair.
I remember the last time she's lost a match.
She hasn't, but she's not in the draw. Yeah, because I looked again and I thought, wait, where is Dita de Root? Because so then we haven't seen her basically since the Olympics, because there wasn't a wheelchair competition at the US Open this year, because they were at the Olympics. It always clashes for the US Open. That's why they don't do them during Olympic years. So I'll be really interested to find out where Dita de Root is, because she's definitely the GOAT. She's won the most. Like, she just wins every single Grand Slam. I can't remember what number she's at right now. But yeah, we'll be looking into that.
She's there's like literally no news as to why she's not playing.
Yeah, I looked everywhere and I was like, I need to see if someone can ask that question and find out where Dita de Root is. Okay. What's coming up on Ground Pass for this second week? So we will still have our watch list. I will still put on Match that you can watch on the screens on the grounds, and I'll put a little TV next to it. You'll see the coffee catch-ups, which are great, and then still our rundowns. I think our rundowns will probably change a little bit. I will try and cover, of course, like the wheelchair matches and juniors to see, to kind of give you an idea of what you should be looking out for in those rounds. But we will definitely be talking about the semifinal, the quarterfinal rounds, semifinal rounds, and obviously the final of the Australian Open. Podcast-wise, Nick and I will be back after the finals to sort of run down the second week of the Australian Open and give our sort of general thought on the tournament. But in the meantime, I'm planning to talk to Will Buchek, who's been on the channel a few times. He is currently in Melbourne, so we're going to chat about the doubles field, especially the new doubles pairings. I'm really excited to talk to him about that. Like, who are the doubles pairings to watch this year? And let's get people watching more doubles. Because again, on a ground pass, that's what you're going to get at a lot of these tournaments later on in the weeks of the tournament. And I will probably also be be recording also with Mitch Michaels, who I have recorded as well with before. He's from the Tennis Channel, and we will just be talking. We'll probably record, and this is the thing with the time zone, I really could not do the math, but we will be recording sometime around the semifinals. So we might just do like a review of the quarterfinals and what to expect and things like that. So that's what you can expect from Ground Pass. No player of the fortnight. This time we will save that till next week, Nick, when we meet up, and it'll be a player of the fortnight for the Australian Open Grand Slam. I kind of think I already know who I'm going to pick, but we'll save it.
Let's see. I think for you, there's a couple of legitimate candidates. It's going to depend on how they do, and are we going to get a crazy thing? Because hey, look, if you like your underdogs, there is a wide open section fighting for a semi-final space.
We're calling it the underdog section. Like literally, there's a section of the draw where I'm just like, wow, this could be like, anyone's.
Two of them have made a Grand Slam semi-final before, but they're not people you would normally expect to.
Exactly. No, exciting times. So that's pretty much it for this episode, Nick, unless you want to mention anything else.
I think we're good. I think it's time to go watch some tennis.
Yes, it definitely is. So again, with snacks. Thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Ground Pass. If you do not already follow us on Instagram, we're also on Threads, Blue Sky, and X. TikTok is gone, by the way. It just disappeared if you live in America. So don't follow us there because I can't really post anything there for at least right now. We have a YouTube channel, so definitely watch us there as well. And we will see you all soon. Soon. Bye, guys.